Hello everyone, welcome. And as you can see, I just pulled Nefer, who is the final piece in my Bloom puzzle. And at this point, as we can see, I've been playing Bloom 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago to the day actually. It's the 22nd of October now. A lot of you guys might know me for my Nilu Bloom guides. I've made so many videos over these past 3 years, and not just videos as well. I was also known for making this insane document. I actually, looking back at it, I don't even know how I even made this, because this is so much text, so much information in this. And it's very cool because, as we'll get into, there are almost like 3 different Bloom teams at this point. There's like the original Nilu Bloom teams with like Nilu as the core. If you guys also saw my nuke run, you'll know that that's more of like a Lauma hypercarry sort of team, where you play her with Ino and then just a bunch of EM buffers, and you get big nukes on a hold. And now there's the new teams, which, as we'll come to, you don't use Nilu, at least you don't use her for her damage, although you can use her as a support buffer at some point. And Lauma, you don't really do that much damage on Lauma either. So with Nefer teams, you're kind of just funneling everything into Nefer. And from what I've tested so far, the playstyle is very fun. As you guys can see now, I am very much broke. The pulls were a mixed bag. I lost 50-50 to Dia. I went to the soft pity on both of them. No! But on the other hand, got Skyward Atlas early and then got our signature early. So overall, I would say it is a success, even though I'm in a bit of trouble now. Depending on who's coming out in the near future, I need to save my primos back up. And that should be the crown skill, the most important talent to crown. So here is the Nefer build I've managed to make. Yeah, she gets so much crit. This definitely looks like a Wuthering Waves crit ratio here. It is worth knowing though that 60 crit rate is basically 100. Her signature set, which is the new set from Nordcry, gives you 30 crit rate. And then on top of that, if you're playing her with Lauma, you get an extra 10 crit rate here. I've got the weapon. The weapon is insane, by the way. A ton of crit damage, and then you get extra crit rate here. And then you get extra crit damage here. And this also goes to, I believe, 36% as well when you activate this effect here. So it's an insane amount of crit value. I think it's even the highest in the game. Varessa's signature used to be considered a lot. It gave 44 crit damage, and then you get an extra 28 and an extra 40. Now what I want to talk about is the artifact situation, which is that Nefer is an EM scaler. Pretty much majority of her damage is EM scaling. She triggers Lunar Bloom reactions, and these are the pieces I have, which are pretty good but not amazing. I believe I have 27 substats. And the thing is, you'll come to realize Nefer is pretty much an EM version of Skirk. And those of you who built your Skirks, you would know getting artifacts for Skirk was a complete nightmare. I think my build here is 30 substats, which I recently got with this lucky piece here. And the issue with Skirk is she doesn't use EM, she doesn't use energy recharge. So pretty much the only useful stats were crit damage, crit rate and attack, which made it very difficult to farm her pieces. Nefer pretty much only uses crit rate, crit damage and EM, which I just have a bit of it here. Luckily though, you can benefit from energy recharge compared to Skirk, but that's the only good thing, because the bad thing is, unlike Skirk, who can use attack pieces, Nefer, you have to use elemental mastery pieces. And a lot of you know elemental mastery pieces are rare, but maybe you don't know how much. You can look on the Wikipedia. It has this nice section with artifacts, and you can see, for example, the goblet here. An EM goblet is 2.5%. EM sands 10%. So it's the rarest piece, which means when you're farming, you need the RNG for it to be on this set and not this set here. Then you need the super low drop rate to get the right piece EM, and then you need the good substats, and then finally you need it to actually roll in the good substats. And then there's another level which is like getting 4 liners and getting high rolls, but that's a pipe dream for everyone. The overall conclusion is just like Skirk, it's very hard to get over 30 substats, whereas you look at the average characters where a good build is like 32, 33, 34 substats because they can use so many. But it makes building your Nefer so hard, to the point where I'm pretty sure most people probably should just be crafting their pieces, at least 1 or 2 of these, so you can get an off piece somewhere, just because of how unrealistic it is. I do wish we had a way of showing this though. If any of you guys play Star Rail, there is this really cool free builds website where you can flex your builds, and one of the cool things about this site is you can scroll down here to relic rarity upgrade comparisons, and then you can look at your pieces and you can see how many days it would take to get a piece like this or an upgrade to it, how much resin it costs, and this kind of thing is incredible. See, a piece like this, it's going to take 2 years to get a piece like this, and it'll be very interesting to show how rare even getting a mid piece like this would take in terms of days if you aren't crafting. So yeah, most people should be crafting, and when you're counting your substats, just like Skirk, it's gonna look bad, it's gonna be below 30 substats, but it's gonna be very difficult to get your builds. Now, before we get into the gameplay, just briefly discussing teams. Now, I think it's pretty straightforward. So her first 2 teammates are Llama and Aino. That is basically fixed. Aino is given out for free. Llama, you might not have her. If you don't have her, unlucky. You probably have to use some other Dendro. But I think if you have both of them, this is basically the fixed 3 core. The real question is, which Force teammate do you play here? I think there's quite a few viable options. You can play Nahida, Sucrose, and both of them are basically glass cannons unless you decide to give them prototype Amber. I personally don't think this really counts as good enough healing, but maybe that works for you. But you could also just go full damage, build them for buff, build them for stats, and they will give a lot of EM. Similarly, you could also play Nilu here. She'll give a lot of EM to your team if you're using the key. Again, those are all glass cannon teams. The 2 sustain options, I think, are pretty much Diona or Shinobu. Bear in mind, Shinobu technically can also use the key, so she can give you extra EM there as well. My personal favorite is Diona. Now, all of the options I said can give you EM. Diona gives her EM through her C6, where when you use her burst, you're getting 200 EM. Now, all of them are very viable. You can play around with them, figure out which one suits you best. However, I don't think the difference between all of them is that big EM wise, and it's really up to preference. Diona gives you 200 EM there. Sucrose is giving you about the same anyway, but doesn't require her burst and has fast rotations. Nahida requires a longer setup because you have to use her burst for her EM, but she'll give you even more than 200 EM. And then Shinobu, maybe you get EM from her instructor set, maybe you get EM from Zyphos, but it's all about the same thing. Personally, my general recommendation is playing Diona because you're getting her shield, you're getting her healing, and if anyone tells you you can't speedrun unless you're playing a glass cannon team, then they're absolutely wrong, and I'll show you now. The last thing is, how do you build your supports? What I found in most situations, you want to give Deep Wood to Llama. This is a bit annoying because in other Bloom teams, you probably want to use this set. However, the way it works out, I've found, is she is the most consistent user for this. You could min-max and give that to another character just so you can get more EM on Llama, but for general use, that's fine. And then for general use, I've found Instructor on Aino works the best, just because she's the only Hydro in the team. She has fast animation, so you're basically guaranteed to get that quick Instructor. And then for your last character, I prefer giving them the new support set. This just requires them to deal elements of damage, so they don't need to use their burst. If they do have off-field application, that could help extend this. But that's what I use to get my speedruns, so let's get into the gameplay.
The mystery unravels. It all adds up. Forest, protect us for the everlasting. Good luck! It all falls into place.
So the first thing I learned when testing out these teams is there is so much flexibility with your rotations, in that you really can just do anything as long as when you're switching to Nefer, you use her skill and you get 3 charge attacks per skill. You can kind of be very flexible with what you do after. For example, in this fight, I used her burst and then I did 3 charge attacks again, and then I went back to setup on my Llama but sometimes you don't need a full setup on the rest of the team. You can just go back to Nefer and start doing your charge attacks again as soon as possible. And that kind of flexibility is amazing, because teams are just better when they're more flexible and when you're not stuck setting up when the enemy's almost dead.
For the everlasting earth.
Can hide the truth. The deception ends here. No more lies.
Yeah, this Chamber 2 really shows off just how much damage potential Nefer has. I mean, my builds are not even finished yet, and I'm pretty much one rotating this boss, which is amazing to see. The one tip that I learned from fighting this boss is you need to be very careful how you position your Ino burst, because Ino burst is not perfect. If the enemies are spawning outside, you might be losing Hydra application, and if you're losing Hydra application, you're not going to be able to get as much enhanced charge attacks on Nefer. So that's something you have to worry about. And then if you're playing someone like Diona, you're also going to have to worry about the positioning of her burst. So with aggressive enemies like this, what I found helps is just waiting for them to move. Other than that, you can see the potential of doing dash cancels here. The extra DPS I'm getting is helping me one rotate this boss for sure. And Chamber 3 is a good example. Sometimes you just have to be patient and wait. There's not much to say. Just wait till the crab comes down, set up your team, and then try to do as much damage as possible. And for example, the rock crab like this, try and hit both the seeds and the rock crab at the same time with Nefer. She has good AoE. Sometimes you might want to go out of your way to target those seeds.
Can hide the truth. Seek within. No more lies.
Forest. You want
Pretty impressive gameplay for a low budget, right? These are my builds. Nefer's the only one on a 5-star weapon. The others, this is the free event weapon. Favonius Greatsword and Favonius Warbow. These are my artifacts. Nothing too amazing. And the talents I'm still working on. Burst is actually a decent amount of damage. Not as important as the skill, but worth getting up. Llama, she's not going to do too much damage in this team, so her substats are not that important. Just get EM and ER. Crit if you want. And then Ino, a lot of people just even use Ino at level 20 or something. Her stats don't really matter. This team is so cheap. Just instructor pieces. Or if you don't have instructor pieces, honestly, I've seen people just use SMS on Ino, and then you just only have 2 buffing sets. You can just use anything on Llama or Diona or Sucrose or Nahida, whatever. I have Ino C1. If I had a C6, this team would be even stronger. And you don't even have to level up her talents. My Diona, haven't really played Diona much since like version 1. These are her pieces. I just picked up whichever pieces had ER, really. Doesn't really matter that much. C6, obviously, nothing really affects Nefer's damage. Apart from the EM you get here. Another thing I did want to talk about is this whole discussion around her dash cancel. I have looked online and a lot of people are frustrated with, maybe not even to do with how difficult it is, but how it feels bad, how they don't like doing it. I could probably show it quickly here. If you guys didn't know, basically the meta way of playing Nefer is doing dash cancels. Something like that. It might be hard to see, but basically as soon as the scythe crescent moon thing sort of moves through, you can dash through it and it allows you to get faster hits. And if you compare that with her normal playstyle, which is basically just holding your left click, you can squeeze in extra damage and it's just kind of just better overall. However, obviously just holding left click can feel more comfortable, and a lot of people are giving the valid criticism that it definitely does look less cool. Like holding, you see her jump in the air and it's just a much more satisfying animation, I guess. Whereas doing a dash cancel, you kind of just don't really see her do anything apart from just running. There is also one thing I have noticed, which is, for example, a lot of other newer characters have really good auto-targeting. Like, for example, with Ressa, if you're attacking with Ressa, you're probably always hitting the enemy. Someone like Skirk, she kind of just zooms towards enemies as well. Someone like Ryzen also does that. What I have noticed with Nefer is, I guess he's kind of similar to Hu Tao. So if you're doing these crazy dash cancels, sometimes you can just kind of be like dashing to some random parts of the map. So you have to practice. If I can give you one tip that might make dash cancels feel way better, is you actually can hold your left click in between pressing dash. You don't need to hold your charge, dash, then hold your charge again, then dash, then hold your charge again. You don't need to do that. For example, if I set up here, I'm pretty much holding my left click down and just dashing once I see the animation go. So if this is you, if your experience with dash cancels has been bad so far, but maybe you didn't know, you can just hold your left click. Maybe that can make things feel much nicer for you, because I do think the damage increase is worth it. So that's been my first impression of Nefer. As for future prospects, I have very high hopes for Nefer. I have seen people say, why would you get Nefer when Llama Bloom teams and Llama Hyperbloom teams are also very strong? First of all, fun aside, and who your favorites are aside, gameplay wise, I do think, number one, Nefer being a hyper carry will just mean she will scale much better than traditional reaction teams. And number two, I do think it is very worth paying attention to the fact that pretty much all of Nefer's damage is considered Lunar Bloom damage, and your Nefer teams will be constantly dealing Lunar Bloom damage. Whereas with Llama, and whether you're playing a Needle Bloom team or a Hyper Bloom team or whatever, the only time you're actually really getting Lunar Bloom damage is with hold. And although it's very stonks damage, I mean, you can one-shot the crab on Dire. It's very stonks damage, but you're only dealing it at very irregular intervals. So from my perspective, it's very similar to Night Soul enemies and stuff that we were getting in Natlan. There is a chance we're going to get more and more enemies that will scale with how much lunar reaction damage you're doing and how fast you're attacking. And in all that content, Nefer probably will benefit a lot. And also, whether you picked Flint's teams or whether you picked Nefer teams, I do like how even though they have like one shield teammate, like Nefer has Llama, Flynn's has Nefer, they are using budget teammates, and there is a decent amount of flexibility with the other two slots. You could say some of these newer teams could be more affordable for the average player than, for example, some old freeze teams where you pretty much have to have multiple 5 stars. Lastly, I do think it's a bit weird that we are using scuffed 4th teammates. They definitely don't want you to be playing sustainless teams like with Sucrose or Nahida, but at the same time, like, when's the last team that has actually been playing Diona? I do expect we'll get some budget healers in the future that will synergize well with this, or maybe we'll get premium healers. I don't know, maybe the Archon is a shielder. I've always said I found it a bit suspicious how there's a lot of Sucrose these days. I'd suspect we'll be getting an alternative to Sucrose in the future. But yeah, would definitely recommend. I do see the criticism and a lot of people complaining about maybe the teams are clunky, maybe our animation cancels are clunky. I do hear that, but I'm having a great time playing this character, and I would recommend if you like Nefer, if you've been thinking about pulling. And I'm excited for when the next Legion Onslaught comes out, what kind of gameplay I could provide. Next video, I'll probably be going over my updated Bloom builds. Yeah, thanks for watching everyone. See you next time.